Will, a little red-haired boy, lives in the city of the dead as the sole human, taken care of by 3 undead since birth: Priestess Mary, a skeletal warrior Blood, and a magician ghost Gus. Together, the 3 raise, teach, and train Will. However, they hold secrets, and so does Will. When Will is 7, Mary teaches him about the undead, humans who made a contract with the god of the undead. They are considered traitors to virtuous gods. The next day, after trial combat between Blood and Will, Gus accidentally spills too much information as an irritated Blood tells him to stop. Walking back, Blood promises that he'll spill everything when the time comes. One morning, as Mary heads into the temple to pray, Will grows curious. He enters the temple as she prays and witnesses her ablaze. A cluster of murdered memories engulfs him as he runs towards Mary, afraid to lose her. Later, Will wakes up, injured, finding a remorseful Mary sprawled by his side with Blood and Gus. Mary explains that she worshipped the Earth Mother, Matter, but signing the contract with the god of the undead made her a traitor, and now whenever she prays to her, she's set ablaze as punishment. However, Matter blesses her with bread of free will. Grateful for the lengths the 3 go for him, Will continues to accept the bread and wishes to pray alongside Mary from now on. As Will grows older, his training and education together with rigorous prayer become tougher. One day, Blood takes him to the underground ruins littered with undead entities, tasking him to make his way back as he abandons him. Making his way, he successfully defeats a demon and earns his spear, when he comes across a looming Gus. Before he can process what's happening, Gus unleashes assailing magic onto him. Heartbroken, Will surrenders, tearfully accepting to be killed by his teacher if he wishes to. Just then, Gus suspiciously comes back from his state and passes the event as one of his lessons, unaware that he just made Will doubtful and now curious about him and the 3 undead's existence. At the dinner table, as they discuss his exceptional performance, Gus and Will keep quiet about the incident. From then on, Will is trained hard, often returning to the ruins and collecting magical weapons like the spear, and sometimes having sinful fun like gambling with Gus and Blood. They sure got a good scolding from Mary for that one. Soon, the juncture of Will's coming-of-age ritual nears, where he must oath to one of the virtuous gods, like Mary oathed to Matter and Blood to Blaze. However, Will is asked by Gus to lose the duel between him and Blood before his ritual. Frustrated, Will demands to know the reason and not be blindly told, as Gus refuses to. In fitting response, Will refuses to accept as well and storms out. Blood secretly treats Will to alcohol, getting him all wobbly and horny as they barge into Mary's room while she changes. Because boys will be boys. Soon, Will prepares for the duel. Dressed in armor, he clashes with Blood and fights bravely, impressing Blood but yielding in the end. Still, Blood praises him. Blood gifts Will the highest of demon blades, the Overeater. Accepting that Will is now of age, Mary and Blood unveil the secrets that they have kept. Blood narrates the events of the deadly war raised in the south, marked by the evil High King wielding the Overeater. Mary, Blood, and Gus had plotted to defeat him by taking the blade. However, glimpsing victory was impossible. They resorted to sealing him under this land by signing with Stagnate, the god of the undead, and bringing a pause to the war. Watching over the seal and unable to leave this land, they assumed humankind was wiped out, until they found demons taking a baby, Will, as a sacrifice to revive the High King. Although Gus objected, the 3 took him in, raising him to head out and discover the world outside. Will finally understands, but is confused why Mary and Blood speak as if it's goodbye. Suddenly, the clouds burst above them as Stagnate himself descends, ready to take Mary and Blood's souls, as per the contract, now that Will is of age. However, Stagnate is interrupted as a rebelling Gus appears, defending them. Will realizes Gus's unusual behavior and requests. He only wanted Blood and Mary safe. Hailing as a hero in Will's eyes, Gus manages to defeat Stagnate, but he rises back, hurting the 3 undead. Sparing them, Stagnate offers Will to join him before vanishing. Will crumples on the cold floor, tearful at the state of his parents. In the morning, he wakes up, mopey, as Mary straightens him up, encouraging him to be strong and continue his journey. Praying to the various gods for his parents' safety, he leaves the temple to fight and is immediately met with Stagnate. Surrounding him with an army of undead, Stagnate thrashes onto him, but Will is steadfast. Impressed, he offers him the contract once again, as Will steps forward as if to accept. Unexpectedly, he slashes Stagnate with the Overeater, but it's retaliated in time. Trapped in Stagnate's web, he falls unconscious. Will wakes up in the strange space covered in water. Turning around, he's illuminated and sees Gracefiel, the god of light, the one who guides death and life. She questions him why he refuses to accept the contract. Determined, Will answers that he wishes to live and die with a purpose, unlike in his past life. Praying for her protection, he ties a strong oath to her. Will wakes, now blessed with Gracefield. Blazed in her blessing, he charges at Stagnate, attacking him only for him to disappear once again. Confused as he searches for him, he's guided by Gracefield once again and realizes that he's gone after Mary and Blood again. Panting, Will desperately runs back to the temple, barging in to find Stagnate almost fetching Mary and Blood. Just as he loses hope, the Earth Mother, Matter, appears, stopping Stagnate as Mary tearfully collapses, bowing, seeing this as a sign that Matter had forgiven her all along. With Matter buying Will time and Gracefield her blessing, Will is renewed in resolve and distracts Stagnate enough to allow Blood to hurl a bowl at him. Wielding his Overeater, he slashes Stagnate, bringing a god to his end. With Stagnate gone, the little family of Will, Mary, Blood, and Gus rejoice, as Gus leaves to fetch some good alcohol to celebrate Will's adulting. However, as Mary and Blood get up, they realize they are to despair, since the god they signed contracts with is now dead. The rejoice soon turns into a happy, sad goodbye, as they drink together for the first and the last time before Mary and Blood are gone in Gracefield's care. Standing before his parents' graves, Will is determined to carry on in life and explore. Meanwhile, Gus has drawn a contract with Gracefield to wander for 10 more years before the High King's seal is broken and he awakens. He gives Will the responsibility to find a solution until the event, with a complete name to enter the world with. Seeing it as fitting, Gus names him William Maryblood, and Will intentionally adding Gus's initial G as his middle name, leaving the old man squirming in his boots. With that, William G. Maryblood leaves the city of the dead. For days, William wanders around, battling demons that come his way, passing desolate ruins of cities and towns with no human contact, until one day, he's attacked by a boar. Killing it, he realizes that it was being hunted, surprisingly by an elf, Meneldor. The two divide the meal fairly and, while socializing, enjoy a hearty meal together. However, Will is careful to unveil his true identity. As they bid goodbye, Menel guides Will to a town ahead before parting and being quite grim when telling Will not to follow. That night, as Will snoozed, Gracefield brought forth a revelation upon him, showing him chaos. Will runs through the woods, worried that Menzel is in trouble, and arrives at a human settlement attacked by raiders. However, it's not Menel in danger, it's Menel who is the danger. With his training, Will easily defeats Menel and his group. The villagers question the group for their crime. Defeated, they reveal that their village was attacked by demons, overthrown, and starving. There was no other way but to raid for food and water. The villagers are furious and demand them to be hanged. However, Will has gained their respect. He interferes, reasoning that being a warrior priest, he shall bless the village's protection under Gracefield and pay reprimands for the raiders' crime. His enemies are demons and not humans. Justifying their cause to commit the crime is understandable. Will decides to take Menel along to his village and take it back from the demons. Throughout the journey, Menel is quite cold towards Will. Once at the village, Will swiftly wipes out all of the demons at the temple, making Menel wonder about his insane capability. The two start looking for survivors, only to find mounts of bodies as Will blesses them away into Gracefield's care. Suddenly, they hear a faint voice calling for Menel. It's a kid attacked by demons and turned undead. Seeing him, Menel is distraught and unable to react, but Will scoops the boy up, helping Menel say his goodbyes before he wishes him away. Seeing Will as a worthy priest warrior, Menel apologizes to him, apologizing that he only thought of him as a spoiled brat, but he's realized that he's anything but that. Menel calls at the door of Old Marple as her ghost floats out. Seeing her and the chaos, he collapses, complaining of gods and his long elven life where he has to see loved ones die. Giving him a scolding, Marple asks Will to take care of him as she passes away. With the villagers back and celebrating, Will and Menel watch the sunset as Menel confides his past to Will. Remorseful at first, but quickly recovering as Will teases him for being a crybaby. He might have taken that personally. Being grateful, he gets on his knees, asking for Gracefield's blessing, and Will agrees to be the medium. The lonely boy has perhaps now found a friend. Will and Menel arrive at the village broken into pieces. There, Menel explains the White Sails to him, a port connecting Southmark and Grasslands. He advises that if Will wishes to gather more followers of Gracefield, whose followers have declined, he can seek them there. They resume exploring the ruins for bounties to purchase from White Sails and rebuild the village when they run into a cheerful halfling, Bee, and a hawker, Tonio. Learning that they are headed towards White Sails without an escort, Will and Manel decide to strike a deal and join them. The group travels, as Bee sings, attracting customers for Tonio to sell to, and even Will helping by healing people and promoting Gracefield. Arriving at the wheat roads at dawn, the group settles at a building to spend the night as Bee pipes songs about the three legendary heroes. It's Blood, Mary, and Gus. Hearing that they are still remembered by people, Will grows blissfully tearful, learning that an elderly woman who they once helped still waits to repay them. As Will practices with his spear, he's approached by Tonio. Being a merchant, Tonio has decoded that Will is not a common boy, hence questions Will's motive, since he's too noble with no greed for money or power. Will meekly wishes for companions on his journey, and Tonio, with a good smile, makes him realize that he, Bee, and Manel might be exactly that. With that, the group of companions make their way as Bee excitedly shows Will the outline of the magnificent White Sails. Arriving at the White Sails, it's as if Will had entered a whole new world. With his little group, he explores the city in awe. Finally coming to the Temple of White Sails. Inside, Will asks to pay his respects as the priest of Gracefield, but is told to go through the detection of faith to affirm that he's no phony. Just then, the bishop of the temple, a vulgar, reputed, and sour-mouthed man, taunts Will. However, Will wins his approval. Back at his living quarters, Will asks Tonio about the bishop when all of a sudden, alarm bells go off. A wyvern has attacked. Unable to see it wreak havoc, Will, together with Manel, steps up to assail the wyvern. Together, the two manage to plunge it down as the city watches them in action. However, in its last protest, the wyvern raises its head to blaze the temple. Failing to use magic anymore, Will reminisces Blood's brute force and attacks the wyvern with bare hands, twisting its neck till death. Tonio and Bee enter, praising Will as the citizens erupt and applaud. Later, Will is summoned by Ethelbald, the crown piece of fertile land and lord of White Sails, to his mansion. He thanks, offering him to ask for a gift, and Will requests to send soldiers to raid the villages in Southmark of Demons. However, the soldiers are at the risk of going savage due to the toxic black miasma of demons, making Will request to build an army himself then. His request makes the prince quite unsettled. Sitting before Ethelbald, Will soon starts realizing the seriousness as the prince threatens to kill him for such a request. However, Will resorts to requesting earnestly instead of violence, and wins him over as Ethelbald comments on Manel giving him a glare when he had threatened. Maybe the elf is soft after all. Just then, the bishop busts in, complaining to the prince that Will is a member of the temple now, and he should have consulted him before summoning Will. Much to his surprise, Ethelbald informs him of the request, proposing to make Will a paladin, under the joint authority of the temple and the crown. Angry and frustrated, Bishop tramples on their way back and grows even angrier upon Will not knowing evening prayers. Teaching him further, he becomes a mentor to Will, who begins to respect the bishop. To recruit fighters, they visit the pub and meet Raistov, a madman warrior and his rowdy group. Hearing that they've recruited Raistov, Bee is asked to interview him about his ambiguous tales of heroism to write her songs. Poor girl only gets frustrated when Raistov gives a vague answer. Oh, tiny hope shattered. However, to spice it up, she proposes Will vs. Raistov duel after the quest and jumps happily as Raistov accepts. At the Temple of White Sails, Ethelbald anoints Will as a knight, a paladin, and the temple and its members rejoice in the birth of a new knight. Outside, as Will and his friends jubilate, he gazes up and reminisces about Blood and Mary. They'd be proud to see him today. Will and his group travel to and from Beast Woods and White Sails, relieving villages of misery and clearing demons with search parties. Word about Will being a competent arbitrator spreads fast across people, and they seek him for decisions and problems. Everything seems to be going well until one day, Raistov informs Will of a missing party. Heading in, Manel embarrassingly looking the other way, thanks Will once again for enabling him to live such a noble purpose, as Will assures that he can say it to his face, turning him beet red. Honestly, who could imagine such a broody elf could blush? As the party advances, they're met with the gruesome scene of their friends' bodies, killed by something monstrously huge. Suddenly, they're faced with hundreds of demons, as the monstrous demon Chimera shows up behind, setting Manel ablaze. Seeing his friend at death's doorstep, Will loses it. Unleashing the Overeater, Will maniacally slashes away until he's eliminated all. Shaking him, Raistov tells him to heal Manel. He kneels, crying before collapsing. Waking up, Will is told that Manel is well. He lays, pondering over what wrong he did to lead his party into such a mess, and gets even more remorseful when he overhears soldiers referring to him as a monster. Will arrives at Manel's bedside, praying to heal him completely. Until now, he looked at everyone as equal, including his friends, but he's realized that to hold a noble cause, is to be above others. Promising to keep his oath to Gracefield, Will leaves to finish matters. Drenched, Will stumbles towards the woods, seeking to fight the Chimera alone, when Manel, now healed, shows up. Blocking his way, the two get into a rough fight, as Will stone-coldly breaks Manel's arm. However, Manel is not stepping back and manages to beat sense back into him. Frustrated, he makes him realize that he's his friend, and that he's no monster, bringing Will to tears and to his senses. The two return back as the rowdy soldiers sit around. Back to himself, Will decides to go for the Chimera together. The following days are busied with the ruffians preparing for the clash before they head to seek the Chimera once again. Returning to the place, they're once again faced with the demons, this time attacking together. As they battle, Manel and Will make it to an abandoned monastery, unveiling the Chimera, who lays there in camouflage to pounce upon them. As the Chimera reveals his motive to undo the High King's seal, Will is certain to end it there. Together with Manel, he attacks the Chimera's multiple heads, rendering it confused. Hailing the wisdom bestowed to him by Mary, Blood, and Gus, together with Gracefield's blessing, he lands the final blow, ending the Chimera for good. Heading inside the monastery, they find that Rastov has already beaten them to it. Soon the rest of the soldiers join them, and the party rejoices. Will is doing good in his noble cause, and that's the end of the video. As always, if you liked what you saw, subscribe to the channel. I'll be uploading a lot of videos just like this, so I'll see you at the next one.